Hello and thanks for joining Corporate Governance Platform. Corporate Governance Platform was proudly brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals. And we are transmitting live from MITV Lagos. I am Dr. Tunde Odeyemi, and today on the show, our conversation is going to be focusing on the induction and continuing education program for directors. And I'm glad to inform you that we have once again in the studio a corporate governance expert, risk management expert, and a highly respected member of ICSAN, Dr. Bamidele Oseni, ACIS. Dr. Oseni is a managing partner, Caleb Consulting Uganda Limited, a firm of risk assurance, financial services, strategy and corporate finance, governance professional and human resources outsourcing consultancy services. He has over 27 years experience in banking, fintech, auditing and consulting services, with last 15 years as executive management, group bank representative at subsidiary banking board of directors, and of course non-executive directors of NGO. He is a Pan-African and seasoned risk management professional and had provided risk leadership for several banks in the East, West, and Southern Africa to design and implement a robust enterprise risk management framework and culture that has supported these banks' business growth within their risk appetite thresholds. He has understanding of banking market and regulatory framework in over 24 African countries in the Eastern, Western, Northern, and Southern Africa. He is a certified risk manager by KPMG Sweden, certified management consultant, fellows of several local and international professional bodies, such as ICANN, National Institute of Credit and Administration of Nigeria, NICA, Institute of Management Consultants of Nigeria, Associate of Chartered Institute of Taxation, and of course, the Nigerian Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria. He holds a bachelor's degree from Obafemi Awolowo University, Masters of Arts degree in Economics from Kampala International University, Uganda, and 2 honorary degrees. He is an international trainer and speaker on many international conferences. Mr. Dr. Rada Bamidele Oseni.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you once again on the Corporate Governance Platform.
Thank you, Dr. Odeyemi.
Thank you for finding time to join us.
Thank you.
And to lead in our conversation. I think the last time you were here, we discussed risk management.
All right.
Now we want to look at the induction and the continuing education program for directors.
All right.
If I would like to start this program, I will start by asking, what does the term induction for directors connote?
Induction for directors according to the Section 13.1 of Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance is that it's a process put in place by institution to familiarize directors with the strategy, the business development, the mission and vision statement of the institution. Why? Because every organization must ask business plan, and directors must know what is planned about. Now, by knowing this, by being inducted, they will have, they'll be able to perform their oversight function effectively. And that's why it is critical.
Okay, if induction is very critical and that's important, what does continuing education program for directors then means?
Okay, continuing education process is just a training program put for directors to update their knowledge, their skill about the industry they face, about the new event happening, such that they can be relevant and be able to perform their oversight function effectively. The board of directors have the responsibility of oversight function over the management. You cannot perform oversight function except you understand the operational and the strategy, and that's why every now and then directors must continually train on the new events, new technology, new thing in their industry, such that they are upskilled and they become relevant.
Okay, at this point in time, I'd like to give opportunities to our viewers to be part of the show. You can be part of the show by asking questions or making comments on the show. To ask questions or to make comments, please send your question or comments to 080-2323-1287. We receive only text message on this program, and your message should go to 080-2323-1287. You have the number on the screen of your TV set, and we are discussing the induction and the continuing education program for directors. And we have Mr. Dr. Bamidele Oseni in the studio doing justice to that. So we expect your questions or comments to roll in. So you have talked to us about induction, which is the very first step.
Yes.
And you said directors need to continue to be trained on the job. Now, what differentiates induction from continuing education?
One is a familiarization exercise. Know the business strategy, know the mission, the vision statement, the operational of the institution. One is a training designed to upscale. One's an upscale exercise, one's a familiarization exercise. That's a major difference.
Okay, why then? Okay. One is to familiarize.
Yes.
The other one is to upskill the director's skill.
Yeah.
So why is it that the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance is so emphatic on induction? Because there is a recommendation on the code that says that as soon as directors are appointed, induction must be carried out almost immediately. Why is it that the code emphasizes this?
Director has fiduciary responsibility. And the fiduciary responsibility, according to CAMA section 305, require director must act in good faith. Require directors must not just act in good faith. Directors must be an agent of organization, the agent of a particular shareholder. So if director is an agent of a particular shareholder, and director must act in good faith, and the liability starts from day one.
Okay.
The liability starts.
The liability of the directors.
It starts from day one. So you can't say I was not inducted. The moment you are introduced at the board of directors, regulators approve you, you sit, your liability starts. So which means you must have in good interest of the company to preserve the asset. So if you want to preserve something, the asset and the business of organization, and you don't know what the asset about, how are you going to be able to perform that function? Meanwhile, liability runs. So it's become very important that immediately, because liability starts the moment you enter that boardroom and they introduce you. That is liability vis-a-vis, you either for error or omission, because you didn't understand the business, you concur to a decision that does not act in a good faith organization, and to the extent the regulators holding you accountable and liable. Okay,
let me get something very clear. You said induction is to familiarize the directors with the business.
Yes.
Does it also include making them to understand their roles and responsibilities as directors?
Correct.
Not just roles and responsibilities as directors, the consequences of their action on the board. Does it include that?
Yes. The directors, the induction, we tell directors what is your responsibility, the consequence of action and inaction. They will let you know how the organization is being run, what are the major challenges, what are the problems, telling you because you are brought in to change something in the system. You must know what you are brought in to change. Otherwise, you'll not be able to perform that function. You are brought in to support, to grow. If you don't know the business you want to grow, you can't be effective in that. So the induction gives you a platform to know what your role as a directors, to know what is expected of you, to know whether your action and inaction, what is the consequences. That's why I talk about liabilities. Your inaction can be a liability against you. Your action, if it's not properly in the regulators, in the expected regulation format, it can also cost you a liability.
So directors need to know all of this during the induction program.
Correct.
Okay, we understand that the induction program is a critical process for directors to know what they need to do being a director. I want to go back to training.
Yes.
Do we need a different form of training for, we have executive directors and we have non-executive directors?
Yes.
On this show, we have talked several times about executive directors and non-executive directors. Now, do we need to have different forms of training for executive director, which is different from what we are going to give to non-executive director, or they should be trained together?
Both. Now, the non-executive director are implementers, they're executors. What is expected of you as an executor is different from oversight function. As an executor, as an implementer, is a different thing. And that they need to have that training. Now, the directors need also to be given train on their oversight function. What is that thing that if you miss out can cause?
When you mention the directors, all the directors
Yes,
are non-executive directors.
Yes, include non-executive.
All the directors.
Yes.
Both executive
Yes.
director and non-executive
Exactly.
directors.
The reason is that they need to be trained together in that oversight function, because the executive director, they act on day to day as the director of the institution. So they also have that oversight and strategic expectation from them. So that is why they need to be trained together and separately. Why? Because why? There is a need for oversight function, there's a need for execution and implementation, which is the executive director. They are involved in execution and implementation, which is different from the oversight function. Because again, the executive director will be acting on behalf of director on daily basis. So they need to understand that oversight function, that when I'm sitting as an executive director, I'm sitting as from the perspective of oversight function on daily basis.
Different from being an executor now?
No.
Okay. Because it's important to know this.
Yeah, very important. So even as an executive director, I'm sitting from the oversight. My intention, every time I do something, I say, will the directors work in the same way? Knowing fully I'm acting as an executive director and do oversight function on a daily basis. So therefore, I need to be trained on the act of execution and act of oversight. Two things: execution, implementing, and oversight. The executive director have general managers working with them. So therefore, they need execution skill to be able to properly manage those general managers. And they say they need oversight function to act in good faith for the company.
Okay, as a corollary to this question,
Yes.
I want to refer you to a particular portion of the code.
Yes.
The Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance provides that all directors should participate in periodic,
Yes.
relevant,
Yes.
continuing education programs
Yes.
to update their knowledge and skills,
Yes.
and to keep them informed of new developments
Correct.
in the company's business
Correct.
and operating environment.
Yes.
Now, the code mentioned all this.
Yes.
Now, can you now explain the reason why the code specifically stipulates that the education must be for all the directors? What we have said here is like saying that, okay, you are non-executive director, you should do all this. So why did the code now specify that it should be for all the directors?
As I said earlier, directors, whether executive or non-executive, whether independent, they are representative of shareholders. And they are accountable to shareholders and the regulators. So a director on the board is represent a particular interest of some shareholders, and also responsible to the shareholders and stakeholders and the annual general meeting. So it becomes expedient. They are regularly trained to update their skills. Look at these days of cyber security. And you go to a meeting as a director, either executive or non-executive director, and one senior manager in IT begin to tell you certain jargons you don't understand. How do you provide oversight function? And that's why they need to be trained along. Because as an executive director, if you look at the fourth industrial resolution, say that people in the age below 40, they are high-tech people. So anybody serving as a non-executive or executive director now is actually going to be over 40. It's another generation who is not as very conversant with IT and the latest IT technologies. But the below people, you find them there. So how do you provide oversight for a young chap who is able to develop an app and is telling you on this app the information of the institution is there? Just press this and what are the controls there? What are these there? So how do you participate in such discussion? I said if you are not properly.
So when we talk about continuing training or continuing education for directors, it also involves IT training.
Yes, because if you look at performance evaluation of the board of directors, expected that every director, according to section 14 and even section 13.4, section 13.4 Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance specify that the training of each director should be based on the performance evaluation of each of the director. Section 14 talks about the performance evaluation of the board director. So director will be evaluated and they will be able to know what are the gaps you have. Based on those gaps, the director will be sent on training to be able to beef up that skill in that area, so that, you know, the whole idea, as I say, is oversight function.
Okay, you have talked about evaluation of directors, which is board evaluation.
Yes.
Right? Is it from board evaluation that will determine the training that is meant for directors, or there should be a strategy for training for directors beyond what the board evaluation reveals?
For me, I would say, as a strategic consultant, I say all. Number one is that board must have a training plan for their directors every year.
Either with or without board evaluation?
Without board evaluation.
Okay.
Why? Because their latest event, their new event, you know, their event happening, digitalization, there is all manner fintech, which is a threat to most of the financial institutions. These things are coming in, and they are coming in a very sporadic and fast way. So organizations should have a training plan for their directors. That's number one. Number two, there can't be a chairman of IT committee, and I don't know the latest event. I don't know what artificial intelligence will do for us as a business. I don't know what our digital strategy as an institution, and I want to provide advice to the man how. I don't even know the digital. I don't even know the level of maturity of the digital strategy of the bank. I don't know the level of maturity of the institution. I don't even know the business strategy. How business strategy is aligned with digital maturity. How the business strategy, digital maturity is aligning with this management maturity, because they work in line. So how can I provide an oversight as a chairman of the committee, as a member of the committee, and as a director, and I'm liable if something go wrong?
So whichever way you need training, whether the board evaluation reveals it or not, there must be a strategic plan for training. Okay, let me also talk to our viewers again. If you are just joining us, it's Corporate Governance Platform, and we are discussing induction and continuing education programs for directors. And Dr. Bamidele Oseni is in the studio, leading in the conversation. You can also be part of the conversation by making comments or asking questions, and you can do this by sending your comment or question to 080-2323-1287. The number again is 080-2323-1287. So we have talked a lot about induction, we have talked about training. Now, the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance also says that the expenses on training,
yes,
should be borne by the company.
Yes.
But it should not be such that will put the finances of the company,
yes,
in strain.
Yes.
Now, how do you what are the guiding principles that you want to recommend in such a way that we can have a distinction between these two, so that we can between not being expensive, not being very expensive to put a strain on the finances of the company, and the fact that they must be trained?
I think for me, these are based on their parameter use. What's the size of the company? I keep on saying, what's the size of the institutions? That's number one. Now, having know the size of the institution, then who are your trainers? For instance, a company ABC with a size of with a total assets of 2 billion might not be able to send his director to Harvard. Meanwhile, a company C with a total asset of 1 trillion might be able to send our director to Harvard. So their size is critical, number one. Okay. Number two, who are you training? Because if somebody attends every training locally, there's no value is going to get to him attend local training. He has to go for offshore training. Okay. Yeah, that's number two. Then number three is that you are going to look at what is the value this training is going to add. For instance, if a company has been losing a lot of money on fraud, on all manners of IT fraud, things like that, and they decide to say we want to send our people on training, what they can do is to have a pool of trainers and look at each of the trainers that can give them value for their money. The critical is that what value for the money are the trainers going to give you? You don't need to go abroad to get value for money, depending on the size of your company. But if you can get the trainer in-house and they can give you, because for me, the critical thing is value for money, your size, and the training need of the directors, and what kind of training directors are attending. And what, I mean, I remember some years ago, someone wanted to send me in the bank I work, and they wanted to send me on training. And I said, there's no training I can attend here. Because I'm actually a trainer there.
May not get the value.
There's no value. So you can be cheap. So you look at cheap and value. You can be expensive, but the value is going to bring you. I attended a training sponsored by a bank, and I came back from that training, and based on what I learned in Sweden, I came up with a profit plan, business re-engineering plan, and the bank made profit. It was expensive, but at the end of the day, it turned to profitability to the bank. So it's a combination of the size, the value for money, the trainers, and even the people that will be trained, the trainee. What kind of training have you attended? So that you don't bring in somebody who has exhausted local training to attend local training, and you waste money for that person.
So it depends on the size of the organization and the value they want to get from such training. Now let's go back to the issue of induction.
Yes.
And like you have rightly mentioned at the beginning, that induction is to familiarize the directors to the business.
Right.
The code went further to say that to familiarize them with
Company
the business
strategy,
operation, company strategy, the senior management.
Yes.
And you mentioned something specifically which is on fiduciary responsibilities of the directors.
Correct.
What then is the fiduciary responsibility?
So as I said earlier, Kama was very clear on that. Company Airline Matter Act of Section 305 was very clear that the directors must act in good faith. Directors are agents of a particular shareholder, and the same thing, they are liable to regulators. The directors must be involved in the performance of the company. They must act in the best interest of the company. The director must be faithful. They must not act in conflict of interest. And director eventually is liable. These are fiduciary responsibilities. They are very liable. So if a director did not act in the best interest because he doesn't know certain things he ought to know, he's liable. If director is not faithful, he has his own personal business, he doesn't know, or she doesn't know that there's a stewardship required and there's a risk that crystallize that lead to the company loss, he's liable. Director is not properly trained, therefore he could not advise, he could not give oversight function, he could not be effective, he's liable. So directors should know that they must act in the best interest of the company. Those are fiduciary responsibility, and they must act with good faith, utmost good faith. The directors must understand, they must act to preserve the assets of the company, the business. You cannot preserve the asset of the company, the business, if you are not regularly informed of how the business is run.
Okay, I have a text message from Mr. Abdullah from Abuja. He said, I'm enjoying you, sir. You have said repeatedly that directors are liable.
Yes.
Now, clearly tell us, what are they liable for? Abdullah from Abuja.
Thank you, Abdullah. Directors are liable for the consequence of their decision. And I give you an example. A company is about to go into a particular line of business, and director didn't know that business very well. And the management came to bamboozle the directors. Oh, we have gotten this and this, and oh, we are going to make 32% return on equity. Don't worry, we stake our job. You know, some management will stake our job, and after that, the business went bizarre. Problem happened, losses happened, and eventually the regulator picked them up. They start bring more capital. So the question the regulator says that what oversight? They will now begin to review the decision. Now that's the decision. Now the directors are liable to decision they take and they don't take. They begin to review that, okay, when the management comes with this project, what were your oversight functions? What did you say? Now, if directors have made a decision, have said something, management didn't do it, they absorb. But if they don't do anything because of lack of knowledge, lack of understanding, not properly trained, and maybe they are fined after they did something.
If they are fined, is it the director that will pay or the company?
No, the company will pay, but they will say director were neglecting their duties.
Okay, directors are liable. I have no time to really take on the question asked by Mr. Abdullah. Let's talk about ICSAN in 30 seconds, yes, because I do not have time on the show again. Do ICSAN have training materials to train directors?
Plenty of
Apart from that, can ICSAN organize induction and training programs for companies that are willing to train their directors?
For recently, they organized a training for us about 2 months ago on data protection and digitalization
for directors
and every members. So okay. ICSAN is doing very well in this area. Most of our training as an institute is directed to induction, capacity building for directors, because continuing education training is a capacity building, and they do a lot of that. I give it to ICSAN in that directive.
Okay, and lastly, what is your advice? I always ask that question here. What is your advice to corporate entities there on how to get induction and training programs right for their directors in 30 seconds?
Let there be induction plan.
Okay.
Induction plan. At what time the plan will state at what time do we induct, and who are going to be our facilitators. That must be part of the package. It must be in the appointment letter of the directors that subsequent to your appointment, you will start induction training, so. And at that time, the company secretary is going to be a lot of assistance in that regard to guide. So there must be a plan, and that plan must be followed to the core.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Bamidele Hosseini. This is where we are going to wrap it up on the show. Thank you for coming to share your thoughts on induction and continuing education programs for directors. And like to thank our viewers and the production
before I cut you short.
I do not have much time on the show.
Director can go to prison.
Directors can go to that's part of the liability anyway. Let me wrap up entirely with this quote, which has been attributed to the president of Harvard University, Derek Bock, and he says, this is a very popular one: if education is expensive, try ignorance. I remain Dr. Tunde Odeyemi. Bye for now.
For the effectiveness of Board of Directors,
sustainability of business,
importance of ethics and corporate brand,
roles and responsibilities of Chartered Secretary,
and for all that you need to know about the principles and practices of corporate governance.
Join the conversation at Corporate Governance Platform,
showing on MITV UHF 43 and channel 255 on DSTV on Thursdays from 4:30 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform, proudly brought to you by the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria.
ICSAN.